Welcome everybody to the annual retreat in an all-new location. Big shout out to Brett LaRose for helping us get this location settled in. Few housekeeping things. Bathrooms are out the door to the left. There's a door over there, and bathrooms are in there. Refreshments are available in the kitchen, and in the fridge there's extra water, soda, whatever. Help yourself. And then does everyone have the password and Wi-Fi and we're all set up?
I don't.
Okay.
We were talking. Is that in my sister grab some material?
You can if you want to. There are packets of the agenda and all the materials up there if you want. So it's, yep. Everyone got it?
No, what is it?
The BFD guest, lowercase fire truck. They keep it simple. Yep. Okay. Everyone have it that need it now? All right. And then just some of my own notes, and mostly for the board members, but also for admin, because I can see we have this beautiful little divide already developed, which Patrick warned me about, but I would like to do a casual experiment if you'll all oblige. So our annual retreats are used to sort of go beyond what we typically do, right? What we typically have time for at a board table. And to that end, my hope for this retreat is we sort of tackle one of the big cans we've been kicking down the road, which is the idea of relationships and looking forward, which is something we really haven't had time for because we've been fixing a lot of other stuff as it comes up. So just to that end, when we join the board or when we meet new people, we tend to jump into this blurb of highlights of all our sort of valorized social roles, right? Like, I'm a parent, and this is where I went to school, and that's all important stuff, right? It tells sort of this topographical view of who you are, but it doesn't tell you any of the fun stuff, like, for me, I would probably stop traffic to save a turtle crossing the road, or that I don't like to pick a favorite color because it's really limiting to do that, or
But you only like one color gummy bear.
it's yeah. Or that I'm a really competitive person, right? And all those things are important for how I view the world and how I make decisions. And the same thing is true for everyone else. So I'm just going to encourage you all today to talk to somebody you don't usually talk to and really dig into who they are as a person, because everyone at this table helps inform what happens in this district and how it's going to move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katrina, who will lead us through a icebreaker.
Yeah, so to that end, there is an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves as well as share a little something about ourselves. So over on the table where Jennifer is sitting, there are some cards that have a statement on them. Many of you have already taken one. If you haven't, your task is to grab a card that has something written on it that resonates for you, that's true for you. And if it's okay, I'd love for us to actually go outside and actually make an oval or a circle. So the task is going to be, I used to call it Me Too, but then Me Too got a hashtag, so I stopped calling it that. So it's really like a common type activity. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna say, hey, I'm Katrina DiNapoli, I'm the assistant superintendent. This is gonna be my 11th year in this role, and I have raised chickens before. And so everybody else who has raised chickens before, I used to have everybody come over physically, because with kids, like that's a nice, physical thing to do. But then COVID happened, so we decided we'd raise our hands. I also have raised chickens before. And so then somebody else goes. And you can kind of see what you have in common with people, and then what's also fun is what you don't. Like, I'm actually a singleton in this group who has ever raised chickens before. Just a fun, easy activity to do that I think we can do in the 20 minutes allotted, but it'd be great if we could be outside, if that's okay with Aaron and Patrick. Okay, so if you haven't grabbed a card on your way to go outside, do that, and I'm taking a So yes, Katrina DiNapoli, Assistant Superintendent. This will be my 11th year in this role, my 15th year in this district, 30 years as an educator. So, and I have raised chickens before. We still have the coop because it costs more than the rent in my first apartment, but all the chickens have passed in various ways. So moving on from that, if you want to talk about it, I'll be here at lunch. Next. Oh, any other chickens? Chicken raisers? Excellente. There you, about half and half. On to Vicky.
So I'm Nikki Coyle. I've been the note taker here for almost a year and a half, I guess. And I moved here a year and a half ago from Pennsylvania after a 30-plus nonprofit career, and then wanted to get to know the community, so started to do this and then sub in all the elementary schools, which are all fabulous. So I'm not going to say that I have any favorites. But I am also the mentor coordinator for the program at Beeman. So I'm trying to do a few more days there so I get to know the kids better. And I've been on an ocean cruise, hated it. I don't know how cold it is, hated it. So that's why it resonates with me. It was awful. It's just like a 3-day thing from Florida down to Nassau. It was terrible.
Any other ocean cruisers? Maybe not the same experience.
I'm Travis Park, the principal at Beeman Elementary. This is my 7th year there, starting. I live in Bristol. I got 4 kids, ranging from 15 to 5 that are in the district too, so that's great. Been in education 19 years now. And mine is I have been on a motorcycle ride. I don't own one because of my experience being on the back of one with a friend when I was younger. I said, no, this is crazy. I'm never doing this again. But, so I've been on a bicycle. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody been on a bicycle or a motorcycle ride? Not you driving. So. It's a little bit more crazy that way. Like if you're in charge, it's okay. When you're not, it freaks me out. Okay.
I'm Ann McKinney. I am the assistant principal at Bristol Elementary. This is my 2nd year in that role, my 7th year in the district, and probably like 18 years in education. And I've gone hiking this year. Anybody else? Yay!
My name is Beth McGeorge, Director of Student Support Services at UNA. This will be my 3rd year, which is hard to believe. Before that, I was a special educator, early ed, special ed, and special ed in the Mad River Valley, which is where I live, May School. What else? That's good. I have been on a train, most recently from Albany, New York to Penn Station in the city. I have 3 daughters that all live in New York City. So that's my most recent training.
I'm Jennifer Bauer, and I'm the Superintendent's Administrative Assistant. I'm in my 15th year in the district. I started at Bristol Elementary for 7 years and then went over to the central office. I have 2 sons that went through Bristol Elementary and MAUSD and are now 26 and 23 and very successful. Had great experiences in our district, and I have a wonderful little dog, Franklin. Yes.
I'm Shannon Warden. I'm the principal at MAUSD. This will be my 6th year at MAUSD, my 12th year as an administrator, and my 19th year in education. And I live in Ferrisburg, just down the road, and I have a favorite number. It is the number 13. I like that it's a little creepy and eerie for others. It also happens to be my birthday. Any others have a favorite number? Doesn't have to be
I'm Erin Tebow. This is I'm one of the assistant principals at MAUSD. This is my 3rd year here, my 18th year in education, and I moved back home to get back to my community just 2 years ago. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to teach in Vermont. And I am a morning person. I get up at 4 every morning to go work out.
Everybody that's not, we're going to
Y'all are crazy.
The next one will be for anyone who's not a morning.
Yay!
I'm Erin Jickner. I'm the board chair. I cannot hula hoop. Interesting fact. I realized that all the errands are in a row, so that might be confusing. But mine is, I like coffee, but I amended it to say I love coffee. If anyone else who's not a morning person or who is,
I'm Aaron Boyne, Aaron with an A.
Principal at Bristol, going into year 2, which is, I think, a principal recent record there. 25 years in education, 18 in administration. What else are we talking about here? I live in Brandon, and I play an instrument.
Like regular or
What instrument? Or like if it was
It says I make noise. It says I play an instrument.
Do you still have your respect? It's hard to know how to raise your hand.
Oh, are we supposed to vote now? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
You play an instrument.
Mike Lansing, principal at Moncton. Starting my 5th year, my 11th year as principal in a bunch of places as an AP a few years before that. In other states, I've broken a bunch of bones. I've broken both pinkies, I've broken both middle fingers, I broke my left tib, and I broke my left collarbone. So, there you go.
All at once, or?
No, all doing silly things.
Well, not doing silly things.
Hey everybody, Justin. Recently joined the board, a year and a half ago, I think now. And I live in Moncton, represent Moncton. We got some big shoes to fill with Steve not being here this year, so I'm excited about that. Let's see, fun fact. I like getting in the rivers in the lake in January here. That's something fun about me. And I wore braces as a teenager, which was super fun and dorky and awesome. There you go.
All right. I'm Jason Rasco. I'm also an assistant principal at the high school. I'm going into my first full year there as assistant principal. I arrived in November last year, but not new to education or admin. I've been in education for, I think, going on 24, 25 years, somewhere in there, and was an assistant principal and principal in the Slate Valley. Let's see. Fun fact about me, I have twin 17-year-olds and a 2-year-old. Pretty great, and they love one another. Pretty great. My card is I have a tattoo. And if it were not for backpacking with 12 teenagers in the mountains, I would probably have the proverbial tramp stamp. but the backpack was right there, so it didn't happen. So thank you, 12 teenagers. Anybody else? I know Justin is.
I'm Kathy Apgar. I'm one of 2 board members from New Haven. I've been on for 18 months as well. And I'm going in my 35th year of education. I've served in every capacity as classroom teacher, as an administrator. I teach at Champlain College in both the undergrad and grad programs. I also conduct workshops around the state and a keynote speaker around the country on early education issues. But my passion really is young children, and I just love watching them grow because I can see what those 12-year-olds are going to be looking like when they're 2 and 3, and it's great to see it happen. And I have 2 sons that went through the Mount Abe School District through junior high school. And I have met a celebrity that I think you all know. In fact, had dinner, drinks, and was backstage at a Billy Joel concert.
Nice.
He's very short. And we went to take pictures. He goes, "Oh, we gotta have pictures. We gotta have pictures, especially with a Vermonter. I've never been near a Vermonter." And he goes, "But you gotta scooch down and make me look tall." So we took the picture with me like this, so I was shorter than Billy Joel. So if you've ever known a celebrity. All right.
I am Barb Crandall. I live in Moncton. I've lived there for 30 or so years, and I'm a retired art educator. I taught in Winooski for 31 years, and at Lake Region in Orleans. And let's see, I love the ocean, and summer is my favorite season.
Oh, I'm with you on that one.
No.
All right, I'm Kylie Pelland. I live in Moncton. I have 3 children, 2, 10, and almost 14. I grew up in Bristol. I've been a board member since December, so pretty new. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have a practice in South Burlington. I also work for UVM part-time. And I have a garden right now.
Great. I am Melissa Laurie. I live in Bristol with my husband and my 2 boys who attend Bristol. I joined the board in March, which for anybody asking, worst time ever.
Especially this year.
That's okay. During my day, I am the network corporate controller for the University of Vermont Health Network. I love numbers and making sure they make sense. And I've lived in Vermont my whole life. I was like, am I alone in this? Oh my gosh. Just one. That's okay.
I was 6 months when we moved, so.
Okay, all right, not quite.
Patrick Green, superintendent. My 9th year as superintendent. Hard to believe, time flies. 15th year in the district. I taught 6th grade for 6 years at Bristol early on in my education career. And 17th year as an administrator. So those numbers sink in when you say them out loud. I have 2 girls. My youngest just graduated from Mount Abe. Both went through Mount Abe and both attended the Career Center, had great experiences. Live in Lincoln. I've actually at one point lived in 3 of our 5 towns back when we used to have 5 towns. So I was kind of trying them all out. But we're at the end of a dead end road in Lincoln right now, and kind of liking that end of a dead end vibe out in the country. So that's probably where we're going to stay. I have been on TV. I've been on a few times. The 2 that come to mind for me, once was an interview after a basketball game in high school, and the other one, Shannon might be thinking of, I was dressed as Taylor Swift, wig and all, lip syncing to Shake It Off as middle school principal in front of 300 kids or so in the
We should be
gym.
able to dredge that video out.
And it was on the video at Middlebury Community Access TV. So
It's worth the Google search.
I was going to say, maybe lunchtime?
and I practiced. I knew those words. I had the dance moves. The Rock was actually my inspiration. I don't know if you've ever seen like the lip sync battle. The Rock did Taylor Swift Shake It Off, and so he was my inspiration.
Anybody else been
Sorry,
on
anybody
TV?
else?
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Weiss. I am in my first year as a principal at Robinson in Starksboro. Coming from 10 years of teaching math and then doing some instructional coaching in South Burlington at the middle school. I'm originally from Heinsberg. I still live there with my family, so my wife and I have an 18-month-old son, Charlie, and a 5.5-year-old daughter, Ellie, who is a rising kindergartner in Heinsberg. And I'm excited to be here. I feel really supported so far, so I just want to say thanks for that. And my piece of trivia here is I have visited another country besides Canada. Anybody else?
Nothing wrong with Canada.
Nothing wrong with Canada.
I used to think that was kind of a given.
Pretty close by.
It's not really a given anymore, really. But
I am Liz Sayre, and I'm from Bristol, and I have 2 kids. One who graduated Mount Abe last year, and one who's starting 1st grade. And breakfast is my favorite meal. Yeah. Even for dinner, anytime.
Oh, breakfast for dinner, yeah. Those of us that aren't morning people do breakfast for dinner.
I mean,
Yeah. I'm Mike Dash. This is my 2nd year on the board in Bristol. My day job, I work at the College of Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience. I've got 2 kids. One will be going to 2nd grade at BES. The other will be there in a couple of years. That's about us. And now you know something about me from 20 years ago, so that's exciting. I played on a sports team in high school, like many of you, I'm sure. Lots of love too.
felt like a sport. Great, excellent. Now you have things to go talk to each other about the break and all those things. So thank you for indulging. I'd love these back because I have new teacher orientation tomorrow. So this one gets you far away.
You don't like it.
I'm happy to introduce myself. Actually, for board members, if you could just take a couple scrap papers. I like to recycle my paper. Just take a couple for an exercise we're going to do. That'd be great. So, hello everybody. My name is Debbie Singheiser, and I'm with the Vermont School Boards Association. I'm the Director of Public Services, I wish. I'm the Director of Board Services at VSBA. I've been with the organization for about a year, a little over. On that slide, you can see a little bit about my own school board experience. I think I've had about 10 years between public and private schools. Most of it's in public schools here in Vermont, but I did start serving on a school board when I lived in Kathmandu, Nepal, and I worked, or I was elected as a school board member there. I am currently serving on the Barstow Unified Union School District Board as their chair. It's a pre-K through 8 district, and we're in a side-by-side with Otter Valley. And then we make up the RNESU, the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union. We had our board retreat last night, and it went till 9:30, so I'm feeling a little tired this morning. But it went really well, so I'm happy to be here. And I want to welcome our admin team as well. And I'm so glad to see you all are here. I'm glad that you're going to be observing, and if you have any questions for me or anything you'd like to talk about with me, I'd be happy to stay afterwards and have a chat with you. Okay? So I know you all just did a warm-up exercise, but I missed it, and I probably should have planned to come so I could have listened and participated. But I really would like to know a little bit more about the school board members that are here in the room with us today. And as I was driving over here, I was thinking, I don't like question number 2. So scratch question number 2. I do want to hear your name and how long you've served on the Mount Abe board, and if you are an officer of the board. And instead of that question of what do you do when you're not serving on in your role as a school board member, tell the group something that you could teach the rest of us. It doesn't have to be a superpower, it could be anything, but just something like if I were to say, hey Erin, can you teach me how to do something today? What would you teach me? And then that third question is related to our topic today, roles and responsibilities. So think about what is important to you about understanding your role and responsibility as a school board member. And the paper that I put in front of you is just to jot down your ideas, your thoughts. I'll give you a few minutes to think individually about each of these questions, and then we will report out. And I would love for Patrick to be part of this too, as part of the governance team. Okay, so take about 2 minutes. You can either think about it, write it down on a piece of paper. All right, I have a volunteer. Somebody brave who wants to go first. And actually, let's just take the first 2 questions, and then we'll go to the third one. So just question 1, your name, service on the board, and something you can teach the rest of us how to do.
Hi, I'm Barb. I've been on the board for about 18 months, yeah. And I think what I can teach the board is the connection, the strong connection that the arts have to social and emotional learning.
Barb, how long did you say you're serving?
18 months.
18 months.
So I'm Mike Dash. This is my second year on the board. I'm serving as the vice chair. I'm just the chair of the finance subcommittee group. And the total cop-out, this is my job is to teach. I can teach you much about neurobiology, about the brain, because that's what I do these days. Focus on memory, on perception.
Really?
And really the thing that I'm most excited about are the rules that dictate how neurons, the cells in the brain, communicate with one another, and how dynamic that can be, how flexible it is. Percent associates with how flexible our behavior and our thoughts and feelings.
You said you can teach us how to have better memories.
I can teach you about memory. I can teach you some practices. I don't know if you're aware, this is my favorite story in this line.
There's an NPR reporter many years ago who was like these world memory championships. It's fascinating. These are individuals who might memorize 7, 8, 9 decks of cards in a matter of minutes. And they can tell you how to draw that card. And the NPR reporter is fascinated about it, and then starts to get more and more in it. And in like 2 years, wins the North American championship, showing like how much of a skill one can actually learn. And it's all about, in that case, an approach to how you structure information in the brain. So there are ways that we can improve.
Thank you. That was fascinating. All right, we're just going to go in order here since it's I'm so sorry. I apologize. My sister. I would want to apologize.
skills. Let's see. So Justin, represent Moncton, and yeah, Barbara and I joined at the same time, 18 months. What I could teach people here today, I could probably teach people here, health and fitness, count calories, macros, fitness plans, and stuff like that to get you on track. Just to get a better version of you.
Wow. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we can do our mental health, our brain health with you, and our physical health with you, Justin. Actually, you guys could start this.
Yeah, this will be good.
Erin, how about you?
Yeah, Erin Drippner, board chair at 3 years, I think. Going into 30? Anyway, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yep. And what I could teach people is sort of the combination of what Mike and Justin do. I could teach you about the brain-body connection and how that relates to co-regulation of other people. So how we use our bodies and cells to help other people maintain a regulated state of being.
You're a lot of specialists. Health specialists in this group.
My name's Kylie. I've been on the board since December. And I feel like we kind of all could find some common ground here. I specialize in obesity medicine, so I teach people about emotional eating and the actual pathophysiology behind that. And also I do a lot of lifestyle modification, education. So I could also teach you how to ride horse.
That sounds great.
Not a board member.
You're not a board member, you're a recording secretary. I was a recording secretary for a number of years, so I liked it. I hope you do too.
So I'm Kathy Apple. I've been on the board for 18 months. There's a whole tribe of us.
Yes, there are.
It's kind of hard to pick which one. I think the downside is I could teach folks how to investigate allegations of child abuse and untimely infant death in a home setting. And that's a real downer, but the much more fun piece is that I could teach you all how to change the oil in a Ducati 750 Monster. I thought that would be a lot of fun.
What type of vehicle is that?
Yeah.
Start there.
And you want the third question?
We'll wait on the third question. Thank you, Kathy. That's awesome. That's a surprise. That's very unrelated to your first one.
Maybe not. Gonna get away.
I'm Liz Fair. I'm the board clerk and participate in the community engagement committee. I've been on the board for 7 years.
Wow, you're the veteran here.
Yeah. And all of my experience is related to personal care. So personal care with kids with high needs. I can teach some sign language, or not proficiency, but a lot enough to certainly communicate with deaf community members. And I've also worked on the other end of the spectrum with people who are older and needs help. I'm also really great at potty training.
Potty training. Thank you. Stuff like that.
Last year.
That's awesome. Patrick.
Patrick Green, superintendent. This is my 9th year as superintendent in MAUSD.
I could teach you how to hold a horse as someone who has a daughter who rides horses, but probably how to make a great stromboli.
How to make a great stromboli.
Yep. Years of practice in a pizza joint when I was in college, so. And continue to practice these days.
Are you going to show us today?
If I thought about it, yeah, I could show a little Sean is this way.
I love that. All right. Wow, I think that was great. Fascinating. If I were to teach you something today, I would teach you how to cultivate dahlias. I'm a passionate dahlia grower. It's a lot of work, especially in Vermont where you have to dig them all up every fall and put them back in the ground every spring, winter them over. But I've gotten really quite knowledgeable. I'm a self-taught dahlia cultivator, I guess, is what you'd call me. So when I retire, I want to go somewhere where I don't have to dig them up every fall. In fact, I have a bouquet of them in my car that I'm taking to the office after this. I should have brought them in to show you. Anyway, thank you for that personal introduction. Now let's talk a little bit about why you think understanding your role as a school board member, your role and responsibility as a school board member is important, or why is it important to you personally? Again, it's a little personal, but why does that matter? And I'm going to go in reverse order this time, if that's okay. And Patrick, you're welcome to say why you think it's important to understand your role and responsibilities as superintendent. That would be fine.
Maybe I read the question differently. I was thinking about what's important to you about understanding well. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
was thinking
you can do it
about
that way. Yeah.
Clarity is important for me to understand, I think. Both in terms of where do I have autonomy and where do I not? So finding those lines. But I also think in terms of clarity around directives that are given, so that I have really clear sort of action to take from whatever those directives might be. So clarity is sort of the broad picture.
Thank you. Liz?
What I have felt is important is that we have our personal experiences. We have a lot of people that are really passionate about children's education, and people, it's most certainly ones they're connected to, even if not education in general. And as a board member, there's a difference between a role as a parent or a caregiver or even teacher or administrator. It is a separate and unique piece that is important, and really finding a way to absorb and feel all of the priorities and help structure that, because everyone can kind of get stuck at a different level of what's most important to them, and then to really pull back from that and look at it as a bigger picture of what's going to support everyone within the system to have a successful future. So it's really separating from stepping back, I guess, and not. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stepping back from one identity.
What is important to me about understanding my role and responsibility? In the last 18 months, it's really become evident to me that I need to know how to respond responsibly to community members that bring their concerns to me even after they've gone through the chain of command, there's been no resolution. I need to know how to address that respectfully and not slough it off on somebody else, and be able to get to the bottom of it and get an answer.
What's important for me, one thing that's important for me, is to have a greater understanding of what's going on at a higher policy level in the state of Vermont. I think the fact that how many budgets didn't pass the second time, it just goes to show that there's a lot going on at the higher level, and I didn't quite understand that. And I think having a greater understanding will not. I mean, I think advocacy is important, but also just helping when I'm sitting at the table as a board member to know how that impacts me in the moment and in the decision decisions that we make.
That's a big question because I feel like I had no idea what I was stepping into, and maybe that's just how my experience unfolded this time around, which is what it is. But I think it's important for me to help foster this sort of common level of understanding for all board members, and especially as we continue to add new board members, to try to get us all to the same common level of understanding. And then from there be able to really dig into issues thoughtfully and have robust conversations that help us move forward rather than sitting in sort of a stagnant rear view looking place.
Yeah, I think as a new board member, last year I did a lot of observing, and maybe like 80% observing and 20% engagement is maybe what I feel like. So, stepping into this year, into the next 2.5, learning about the policy and governance portion of that, and just know how we communicate back and forth with Patrick and with each other, and like what our roles. I mean, it says it right in their roles and responsibilities. I think the budget discussion for the 4 months that we were doing it as a group really highlighted a deficiency in the board of like, what can we do, what can we not do, how do we communicate with stuff. So, to me, knowing our process is important.
Yeah, borrowing from Patrick, clarity, and then clarity on how to keep the balance of the expectations on protocols with the role of being a school board member. So, like, how do I represent the community? How do I do best for kids? And your limitations. That's been confusing for me.
Yeah, just to write about that, I think that, I voiced this and you've actually helped us with this a little bit in the past, and I appreciate the work that you've done with this before, but for me, it's just trying to understand the role that we have as this link between community and schools and the administration, and what that linkage looks like across those different levels. I find it's a strange role that I don't fully understand, in that you're elected by the community, but then not necessarily to represent the community per se, but to represent the interest of the district, right? So already there's a slight disconnect, and then you have a relationship with the superintendent that's sort of filtering some of that, and so how you can maintain that appropriate linkage, but while maintaining your responsibilities as a board member itself. That's the balance that we're still. Yeah, that's what I struggle with.
We'll talk about that.
I figured as much.
Yeah.
That's the part that I have to wrap my head around fully.
You may have some hard science and all the scientists figures out here, is it? We had somebody join us. Hi. Sorry. That's okay. That happens, right? Not when we expected. So tell me, what is your name? How long have you served, or tell the group, and what is something you could teach us, a skill or a piece of information or something? And then that's the last question. And if you don't feel prepared, don't have to answer.
I'll wing it. It's okay. So Melissa Laurie, I've only been with the board since about March. The skill
this March,
yeah,
March of 24.
yeah.
So you're the newest member so far, then, right? Yeah.
Well, we elected one. Yeah, that's here. Yeah.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah. I don't know, the skill that I brought when I came to the board, because we were in the heat of our budget, was a finance perspective. My education and my background is all in finance, so that's the skill I like to think I bring to the board, and then some perspective as a parent in the community as well.
What about fun? Like something that has nothing to do with education or your role as a school board member, just out in life in general, is there something you can teach us all, like a hobby or something?
I just started dabbling in sourdough.
Oh, yay.
So I have to, yeah, so that's been fun to learn. It requires me to get up at 4 a.m. with my other early morning birds to ensure I balance all the sourdough eating, but sure, I can dabble with that.
Awesome.
You know, there was a couple times, I know for myself, I was like, oh shoot, am I leaning too far into management? Unintentionally, of course, like I'm trying to act positively to help the superintendent and the community and us as a board, but I think better understanding where that line is and how to manage through it would be helpful for me. I consider it really, really well too about the communicating aspect of it. Yeah.
Well, just to put your minds at ease, I hope this will, and maybe it might not for some of you, the learning of how to be a school board member and our roles and responsibilities, it never ends. I mean, I've been doing it for 10 years and I learn every single board meeting. I learn every time I do a board training. That's why I feel like one of the keys to having an effective board is to have that continual learning and development at the board level. And it truly is an art, not a science. It's sometimes you just have these situations or scenarios where it's not an obvious thing. It's not black or white. There's a lot of gray area. And so it's kind of learning how to become comfortable with the discomfort, I think is how I put it. And I'm not here as a sage on the stage by any means today as the best board member in the history of board membership. I'm here to help facilitate your learning. And I'm also happy to answer questions to the best of my ability, but there's still a ton that I don't know myself as a board member. And I've learned how to accept that discomfort and try to get up in front of board members all the time and train them or teach them when you yourself feel like there's still gaps in your own knowledge and understanding. But it's fun and it's enjoyable. So I hope you all think so too, most of the time. Sometimes it's not. All right, so we talked about me a little bit. So just 2 basic training goals. These are goals that Erin and Patrick and I talked about for today, that we really hope that today will increase clarity around roles and responsibilities in the context of educational governance. And also increase awareness, raise awareness of the characteristics of what an effective school board is and how it impacts our students. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read this article that was sent to you, but it's called The 8 Characteristics of Effective School Boards. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, I would encourage you to. It's basically, it's a National School Boards Association publication that came out in 2019. I expect they'll probably have another version in the not too distant future. But it's based on lots of research. It's not just one study, but multiple studies about what makes an effective school board and how that does in fact impact the learning and the education, the student outcomes, if you will, of school districts. So I hope we'll have time to talk about the article. At the end, I did kind of come up with a few of those types of questions that will help us with our thinking about the article. And but if we don't get to it, I could leave the questions with you, and you could do that maybe at a future board meeting. Okay? And I'll refer to the article too as we go. Sometimes I lift quotes from it. So just a few session guidelines that I would like to propose and just make sure, have you consider accepting. And this is really mostly just to keep us on track because it's a big topic. We could be here all day. So what I have found is that in order to kind of get to a critical point or get to a point that I hope we'll get to, some of these guidelines behind me are ones that I find are quite helpful in just keeping us moving forward. So I really do ask you to participate, and that could be in the form of questions, comments, observations, things from your own experience. But when you do, to please try to keep it brief and not to go on too long because we only have 2.5 hours together. Listen with respect, that's such an obvious one, I hope, and I think we all do that in most cases anyway. This isn't a contentious meeting by any, this is different from a board meeting, so this is about learning. So I think this is an easy lift or an easy ask. Definitely voice concerns as we go, so if there's something they're not getting, to ask about it. And if it's something that we can't get to today, because again, we have a limited amount of time, it's something we can always parking lot. And I can also point you to other resources that might help you after today. And just enjoy the learning journey. All right, is that okay with everybody? I should ask for your consensus. Thumbs up? All right, great. So, roles and responsibilities, that's why we're here. Let's begin. So, I just wanted you to think about these two words. What is a role and what is a responsibility, or what is a responsibility and what is a role, I guess is how they're up there. And just think about what the words mean. Not in the context of our discussion today in terms of educational governance, but in general. Sometimes I feel like when I talk about these terms, that it's sometimes more helpful just to step back and think, what do they mean in the real world outside of education? What is a role? What is responsibility? So if you want, I'm going to give you a minute just to think about it. Again, the paper's there for you to jot down ideas. I do a better job thinking when I have something to write with. You don't have to write anything, but just for a minute, think about, in your mind, what is a role and what is responsibility? And then we'll do a little group share out. Okay. What'd you come up with? No particular order. We're not here to correct you. Just what do you think of when you think of these words, role and responsibility?
I think about, I mean, maybe it's not an apples to apples comparison, but policy and procedure. You have the policy, which kind of is like the overall statement of.
Think of it as the definition. Like, are you talking about a role or responsibility?
Role. And then
okay, what is a role? Just in layman's terms, laywomen's terms.
Role is the synopsis of your charge.
Okay, synopsis of your charge. Perfect. Like, that's what I wanted. I'm trying to get it. Just a regular old definition of these words before we start talking about them in the context of school board governance.
Okay.
Perfect. Synopsis of, I already forgot your definition. Your charge. That's a role.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody want to take another crack at role or responsibility? It doesn't matter.
For me, the responsibility is like the obligation that we need to meet, and the role is your part in ensuring that responsibility is met, or that obligation is met, right? So there might be obligations that are not meet as a whole district that require lots of stakeholders. So that's the responsibilities, the goals, but the role is the specific part of that that you can contribute to.
I thought about it kind of the same, as a role being sort of a part you play, and a responsibility being an imperative or an obligation, something that has to be done.
I was thinking about it in a similar vein, and then sort of applying in particular the role to sort of athletics, team sports in particular. So thinking about what Mike was saying, I think about a role not so much in what you can do to achieve that sort of collective sort of accountability that you share, but more specifically, it's what you should be doing. I think sometimes, like if I can be on a basketball team and rebounding, but my job is the point guard and I'm the outlet, but I'm in rebounding because I can, I haven't lived up to that role of being the outlet, and now that role isn't filled, and when someone's looking to pass, there's no one there to pass to. So not just I do it because I can, but the importance of adhering to the role that I am assigned within this collective so that all roles are filled and accounted for so we can collectively achieve that responsibility.
It's like a friendly one.
Yeah.
Liz, do you want to go? Melissa, anyone else? Barb?
Well, I was thinking of the role as the job title.
Yeah.
And the responsibility would be all the tasks that are related to that role.
Okay.
I have role is basically whatever you said is defined function in a given situation.
Did you say function?
Function. A defined function. And responsibility is the obligation to complete tasks that are requested and required.
Did you look this up? Or is that out of your brain? Wow, good. That sounded very official, like a dictionary, Webster dictionary.
No.
Good job, Kathy.
Step 2 in changing the oil.
Yeah. Nobody's forced to do this, but anybody else wish to? No? Okay, that's fine. So I just want to offer you a couple definitions that I looked up online, just on widely well-known online dictionaries. So a couple different, I think I have 3 on that side, yeah. So I just jotted down some words that I heard the different board members make, and there's a lot of overlap. And when I think of the word role, the first thing comes to my mind, you have an athletic point of view, I have a theater point of view. I think of the roles that somebody plays on the stage, right, in a movie or a film or a theater. But yeah, I mean, those are, I heard you say your charge for a role, the part you play, a job, a title, a function. You see all those words are up there under the definitions for role. Responsibility, I heard obligations, your imperative. I heard somebody use the word accountability, and then tasks related to the role. So yeah, I think it's interesting, that second definition under responsibility, the state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something, which I don't like the second part of that definition very much. We want to hopefully don't get blamed for too much, but yeah, it's about being accountable. It's holding that accountability. We are responsible for something. We are accountable to someone for what we do. And then the role is definitely more of like the function, the job, the parts that we play to help us with our responsibility, help us meet our responsibilities, if you will. So why do I spend time on this kind of silly little definition exercise? It's because I find myself doing this as a board member, using role and responsibility sometimes we use them in the same sentence quite a bit, and sometimes we don't stop and think, what is the difference? There's a slight distinction, and there's an important distinction to make between a role and a responsibility. But sometimes I think we might use them interchangeably, so it's good to be clear in our understanding of what these terms mean before we take the next step, which is to talk about what they mean in the context of our school board work. Any questions, comments? So that's what we're going to do next, is now we're going to think about these terms in terms of the board and the superintendent. So for a few minutes, think in your minds, what in your mind is a responsibility of the board? And sometimes people like to think about these two things at the same time. So if you find your mind kind of going back and forth between board and superintendent, that's totally fine. That's why I put them both up there at the same time. But if you feel more comfortable doing one at a time, that's fine. So think about it individually. What do you think in your mind is a responsibility of the board? And similarly, what in your mind is the superintendent's responsibility? And CEO is often the term that we use for superintendent. I use them both almost the same amount of times. No right or wrong answers, just thinking about it. Lots of good discussion in those small groups. I know it's easy to veer into that definition or that discussion about what is a role. Like, I heard a couple people talking about, well, that's kind of more of a role. So I know it's not easy to make them distinctive, but if you can, right now, let's just focus on responsibilities of, oh, I don't have the slide up, but I put the definitions back up again. What did your group come up with in terms of what is the responsibility of the superintendent or CEO, and what is the responsibility of a board? Can you put it succinctly in a sentence? Did you come up with like a motto, or is it hard to do that? How would you summarize it?
I think our group just came up with just do it.
But who's the do it?
All of us together.
And I think our group almost came up with a little bit of the opposite. Like, don't be so in the moment that you're not, like Patrick said, being an architect of your future, like having a greater vision.
So who's that? When you talk about that, who are you referring to? Being the architect of your vision?
I think it's the responsibility of both sides.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess you would call sides. Both
parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we started with saying that there are shared responsibilities.
Yeah.
So overall vision for the district and for what we want this education system to be able to achieve.
Right.
And then we started to parse out maybe more specific responsibilities. The board may be responsible for sort of articulating those broad visions.
Right.
And sort of monitoring progress towards that. With the superintendent being really responsible for implementing approaches that will get us to that.
Towards the vision.
We sort of said that too, but really thinking about that in terms of being informed by the superintendent, who's the expert in education and the trajectory of it, and what it looks like, and what the future of it might be. So I know we have a lot of educators in this group, but as someone we hired to be the expert of this district and what should happen, really being a visionary as a board responsibility has to happen in collaboration with the expertise of the CEO.
Anybody want to add anything?
We also talked a little bit about changing how we're looking at ourselves from being responsible for one subgroup of this board and being a trustee of the whole district instead. So it's a little bit different way of looking at your responsibilities, right? Because if you're just responsible for one subset of Moncton, right, then your vision can get kind of skewed into just looking at what might be best for that one group versus this whole 5-school district. Yeah.
And the fact that the data that we have, a lot of the records that we hold on file is data collected pre-COVID. And how we don't have current data. And what we need to do to collect the data that we need, convey to the superintendent that we need that information in a timely fashion, and then find a way to use current data to help all of us build that vision moving forward.
So I understand you're about to embark on Portrait of a Graduate, right?
I'm sorry?
You're about to embark, the district is on a Portrait of a Graduate exercise, which you'll be talking about this afternoon. So that is a wonderful process for collecting data from your community. I haven't been through it myself personally. I've seen lots of other school districts go through it, but it's a wonderful way to update your vision and to I know you have your global end statement, which is a vision, but to take that and to see if you want to modify it, how you want to modify it, with that very important, critical input from your owners, your community members. So that data will be so helpful. I know we were also talking probably about other types of data from the AOE, like student performance and outcomes and things like that, but that data is what you will find so helpful when you go to talk about your vision for Mount Abe as a district. as a unified school district. Yep. So it's coming. I don't know if you've ever heard this term, or I was kind of teasing before, can you condense this into one slogan or one saying? But oftentimes when you read about school board governance, you might have come across this. I'd be curious to get your reaction if you think this is a fair assessment. A board's responsibility is to see that schools are well run, but not to run them. Thoughts? A board's responsibility is to see that schools are run, but not to run them. And I think we could insinuate that the person that is responsible for running them is the CEO, the superintendent. Not single-handedly, but that is ultimately the responsibility of the CEO, is to ensure that the schools are well run. The board is there to assure that this happens. We'll talk about that. All right, but before that, I have one more exercise for you to do in your small groups. So now that we have a better understanding, kind of a shared understanding of what the different responsibilities are between the CEO, superintendent, and board, and what you're accountable for, because that word we didn't talk about too much, but ultimately we are accountable for different things, right? Let's talk about the roles. That's the functions, the parts, the titles, the jobs, the tasks that we play, respectively, the board and the superintendent. So again, what we'll do is have you go back into your groups. Are you okay with going right into groups without doing an individual think first? Some people really like that individual time, but I'm trying to catch up a little bit here. Let's jump in. Let's jump back into those small groups. And so your task now, your role now, is to differentiate the roles of this board versus the roles of the superintendent, okay? And you can keep a list. You do it however you want. And then we'll talk about that in a big group. And I'm gonna put it up on the board. We'll capture what you all are saying, okay? About 5 minutes for that, is that enough time?
Sure.
All right. All right. What do we have for roles for the board versus the roles of the superintendent? Again, a lot of gray areas. There could be overlap. It's an art, not a science, all those things. So no right or wrong. This is just what did you all come up with in your groups?
Okay, so for superintendent, we had an educational leader responsible for the management of staff, student outcomes, and strong interpersonal relationships with the community.
So I heard the word responsible, right?
Yes.
We want roles, right? So what's the role of the CEO in doing that?
Management of the staff.
Leadership.
Leadership, yes, thank you. Leadership of staff, student outcomes, and relationships with the community. Strong relationships with the community.
Anything else?
I felt like that was very all-encompassing.
How about the board?
Stewards of a sustainable, accountable vision that will provide the best educational experiences for all.
Okay. So give me some words that would describe your role in that. That's a big statement. Like what does that look like? What are some of the functions or the tasks or the
Like, am I not understanding?
Right, did you just dabble into responsibilities?
Okay. Oh, no, I know, but I'm talking about tasks, functions, like, so stewardship could be a role, okay? Yep. What else did you say leadership? I couldn't remember, no?
I did not read that.
Okay. It could be a role.
Is it like upholding the policy and governance? Like,
It's a responsibility, right?
Say again. I can't hear.
We're trying to delineate between responsibility
It's not easy, I know, and role. Remember the definition of roles,
Trustee.
functions, tasks,
What?
parts that you play. I'm afraid I'll lose lose my screen and never get it back. A part that someone or something has in a particular activity or situation, the function that's assumed as part played by a person or thing. So stewardship is a role, yeah. Anything else?
So what about visionary or?
Visioning?
Visioning, data researching.
Data researching.
Data analysis.
This is all board you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Progress monitoring.
Say again?
Progress monitoring.
Progress monitoring for the board? Okay. Yeah, but just, you don't have to go, I mean, both groups at this point, the floor is open. Progress monitoring, this group over here, do you want to add, you haven't gone yet, have you? Yeah, you did.
We definitely are responsible for setting the budget target.
Budget?
The number.
Setting the
Fiscal responsibility.
Katie's responsibility.
What is our role?
Fiscal accountability.
How about this word?
Oversight.
Communication.
Communicate, understanding the budget and how it impacts our district and how it impacts our community, understanding how our budget impacts our taxpayers.
So the budgetary impacts.
Yep, and communicating that and communication. And we had a lot of differences in the how we get there, kind of defining that. I think Mike could probably articulate it pretty well where you were going. In the how do we get to our goals? We have different goals in that.
The board's awful busy. Look at all those roles. What's that CEO doing over there? He's going out to lunch every day with his staff. What are some of the roles of the CEO?
You make a third column, like a Venn diagram, you know, that all just overlaps, because I think a lot of it is that. Because all the things like below visioning could also go to the CEO.
I even think visioning down, I think could probably go over the CEO.
Oh.
Like copy paste.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I thought you meant like he's looking down. I'm picturing him up here looking down at the organization, you know, the vision down. Data researching, data analysis, progress monitoring. Yeah, a lot of those could be duplicates for sure. You see how it's kind of overlaps in gray? Yeah? Patrick, anything that a role that you play that maybe the board shouldn't play or doesn't play?
The management piece, I think, is the one that's already up there.
Oh yeah, that's there.
I'm sort of thinking of it in the policy governance context of sort of vision, mission, ends. So establishing the vision, mission, and sort of the where we're going is the role of the board. And I would say monitoring progress toward that is the role of the board. And determining, which fits under that management, how we're going to get there falls under the role of the CEO. And there's overlap, right? So Liz talked about the budget, how much money we spend, which is a target set by the board for sure, has an impact on how we're going to get there and by when. But there are, of course, many, many, many other factors that go into that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that leaning into that policy governance structure helps define roles as much as you can. I think they're still gray, but it's designed to eliminate the gray to the extent possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the strong points that policy governance advocates will make. That's one of the strengths of the system, is that it provides that acute clarity around roles and responsibilities that other governance systems don't provide. It helps not eliminate, but lessen that gray area.
So I'm going to just say something personally. I'm not representing the board at this point. I think that is my fundamental rub with the policy governance period. I like having those gray areas. I think that is the true function of a community volunteer board in this area. And when we start doing the us versus them thing is where we get into trouble. And there is a loss of trust and communication. And I'm just putting it out there, but I think that needs to be said.
That you like the overlap, you like the gray areas, okay.
And I think that's what the community is comfortable with and is asking for.
So this is what kind of like, I'm not sure. So if I'm sold on this yet or not, but it feels like at present we've set up, the board is responsible for deciding where we're going, and Patrick and superintendent is responsible for how are we getting there. And it feels to me like the thing that might be missing is our ability to say, when do we need to be there by? So we need to do where are we going, but also when are we going to get there? So that might help us get some parameters around the gray areas. And then I think we've all realized along the way with our monitoring reports and discussions is we're not all that good right now at deciding are we actually getting where we want to be going. And so I think if we do a better job as a board initially in setting up not only where we want to go, but when do we need to get there, and how are we going to really specifically measure progress to those goals. That allows us to provide much more direct feedback to Patrick as to is the how working or not. And I think it also gives a bit more framework for community concerns to be addressed, because each community concern can then be tied into one of those ends and the progress that we are or are not making towards that. And that allows us to maybe play in the gray area, but within a framework that we've set holistically.
And I think that's what we talked about in our group too, is the fact that we have an end statement here that doesn't begin to match where we are currently at in our communities and in the country as a whole. And that's a big part of the work we haven't been able to get to, and that's where the frustration lies. But I do want to maintain, I agree, parameters, but to keep that gray area. So there's overlap, and I think on both sides, the communication and collaboration needs to be on. And that's why I don't like the left versus the right. You know, I like that Venn diagram area a lot better. But I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the board.
Yeah, I feel like again, for myself, we'll make the most progress when we are in that gray area, working together for the positive outcomes that we all desire as a board, as an administration, as a community.
So I guess I would add collaboration to both sides.
You wouldn't?
I would.
You would, okay. Collaboration is a role. Yeah, collaboration for sure. All right, good discussion, you all. I mean, as I said, no right, no wrong, kind of interpretation. The important thing is to be clear. Who does what? I'm going to offer you some information for you to take away with you, do with it what you wish. But I'm going to switch from a facilitator into more of a trainer role at this point, okay, and offer you some information that comes out of a lot of research and on effective school board, or effective educational leadership, let's put it that way. So one way to think about the roles, and it's you're absolutely right to say there's a ton of overlap, there's a ton of gray area, and sometimes it is necessary, and sometimes it's even beneficial to be in that overlap area. But there's also value in understanding that we still have respective roles that have to be fulfilled. All right. So one way it might be helpful to think about this is looking at this slide, which is governance and management. So really, to be a strong and effective board, it's to understand what the board's governance role is and how it does differ from management, and who is really driving which of these two things. So hopefully you're aware at this point of your school board journeys that the board is responsible for governing the district, while the superintendent or CEO is very much in charge of managing it. So governing, the word govern is actually a Greek word which means to steer. So in the context of school governance, it means, and I heard some of you say this, especially the group over here, about guiding or steering a district towards its vision. And looking down the road into the future, I heard that in both groups as well, in order to help fulfill the wishes of your owners, of your community members, right? So the focus, and again, I heard this word, of the board's work is very much on this why. Why does your school district exist? So that's the governance role, if you will. Management is actually a Latin word. Manage, it comes from, it means the hand. Like, I don't know if you speak French or Spanish, but le main in French. So management is very different from governance in that it's about handling things. It's about doing the day-to-day business of your organization, of the school district. It has everything to do, I'd say, with the operations of your district, of your organization. And it's that implementation of how the things get done. So while these two functions or roles are very different, they're both essential and they have to happen together. And when the two are met in partnership between the superintendent and the governance team and the board, and you do this together in partnership, then you help guide and move the whole district towards its vision. Both essential roles, but different. And so I like what you're saying about the overlap. I get it, and sometimes that is absolutely necessary and valuable, but also if the board doesn't govern, then that just doesn't happen, because the superintendent can help and support you in your governance role, for sure, but he's darn busy with the management of the district. Anyway, I'll stop there. And I'll keep going a little bit. I have a couple different analogies too that could help clarify the thinking.
I think when we were talking about stewardship,
Yep.
I think it also has oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Those to me are very much the same. Looking at what the role of the board is, and the oversight of the organization as a whole.
Yep.
Is also the oversight of that management.
Yep. Yep. We're going to talk about oversight too. So here's a silly little riddle. How many school board members does it take to screw in a light bulb? Nobody want to take a guess? None. Why? Because it's up to the board to say we need lights. It's kind of a silly analogy, but the purpose of it is, again, it's that idea that why does the district exist? Why do we need lights? How do we know the answer to that question? Well, we get that information from our community, from our owners, right? They help us, they tell us what they wish to see. And then once that vision is in place, that you as the board help to create, then you step back and you empower the CEO or the superintendent to decide how is best to reach that vision. So in this cartoon example, the vision is that we want light. The superintendent figures out which light bulb to use to provide that light. Now, in the context of public education, again, the board creates the vision and continues to guide the whole district towards the vision, but it's tasking the superintendent all along with the how. How is that work going to get done? How are we going to be moving that district towards the vision? So you delegate the day-to-day management of the district to the superintendent. They have the training, they have the skill set to do that. That's why you hire them. That's why you engage a superintendent. This is what you pay them to do, right? And there's actually a, in that article that I referenced before, the 8 effective characteristics of school boards, one school board member quotes, I'm not a professional educator. The superintendent and her staff are the professionals. And we say to them, these are the results we wish to see. You are in charge of how to do this. And obviously the superintendent doesn't do it all by himself. That's why he has central office staff. That's why he has a leadership team, his own admin team, and then everybody else in the organization. So that definitely needs to be recognized.
So I think where the complexity for me is, and what I've spent the majority of my time on board understanding is, yes, we need light. And yes, the skill sets may be there to put it in, but why can that not, what are the barriers to that light being turned on? And how can we impact or reduce the barriers that may exist? Right, like, so, because it's so complex and it's full of humans and it's full of learning and new practices and just students and variable needs and state influences. So it's really taking the time to understand what the barriers are to it and how we can impact positively and reduce those from this position. Because if the light just didn't get turned on and we didn't reach that goal, then what, right? Because there's always going to be a goal, or at least the way that the board has talked about it since I joined was the goal will always be higher. You know, you want 100% proficiency in all grades all the way across. But so how do you have that incremental goal setting and then understanding? I don't know. So it's like I get that that a board says we need light, and then the superintendent turns it on. But that's not the experience, right? Like that's not what happens. Or at least not for everyone, right? Inevitably, like whether it's social services or whatever you're in, whatever field you're in, you're not always gonna, the goal isn't always gonna be met, and the goal is always going to be more than which is good, because there should always be growth. So say you did meet a goal, there would be another one anyway. So there's an endless, unreachable, that may not have been helpful. That's where I see the challenge.
I love your cartoon because it also makes me think about, doesn't matter how many school board members are there to climb the ladder, or how many superintendents you've got that'll tell them to do it. It's the community that bought the ladder, buying the light bulb, and is paying the power to turn the light on. And we can't forget that piece.
And 2 of those 3 facilities people wouldn't be there because we have vacancies.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no help.
Right, and almost, yeah.
Hold the ladder, Patrick, you climb up.
So that's kind of the rest of the riddle. So it's up to the superintendent to decide if it will be an incandescent, fluorescent candle, solar neon, or LED, and then designate his or her staff to actually screw in the light bulb. That question of barriers is a good one. I think a board, do you all have a copy of this? Do you all have that? I mean, because honestly, I go back to this a lot as a board member, and I think, what is my role and what are the things that I can do as a board member to help remove those barriers, right? And oftentimes those barriers are things like more money. We need, you know, and so that's budgeting. We mentioned that as a role of the board. We're not the ones writing the budget, but we are saying to our superintendents, hey, here we are setting some budget parameters for you to create a budget that's going to help us move our district towards its vision by meeting some of these intermediary goals, right? And so please bring us a budget that reflects how you can do that. And then as boards, we go and we first adopt or approve the budget, and then we go out and try to get it passed and ensure that the money's in place, the financial support is there to help implement those goals. So that's one of our levers, right? We create policy. We ensure that there's professional development provided to the staff so that they're able to be able to do their work that's also moving the district towards its goals. So we do have levers and abilities to help through our essential work, and that work is essential because, again, if the board doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. And so it's what we could, yeah, I'll just stop there. I'll show you.
I think I fundamentally agree with Frank.
Yeah.
And then the sort of lived experience feels like we set this up and Patrick chooses LEDs, and then we got a big vocal segment of the community that says, oh, it really should have been solar. And they're very vocal and they want pushback, and they bring that to the board. And then in the budget context, you have a whole chunk of people say, I'm not going to vote for the budget unless it's solar. Right? Be absurd with this and keep going with this analogy, right? And then all of a sudden this like ideal differentiation of roles and responsibilities breaks down, and it breaks down, I feel, in a way that's really detrimental for everybody involved, because everybody is still trying to work towards the overall goal, but now nobody really knows what their role or responsibility is, because we've set up this binary of this is what happens here, this is what happens here, and try to ignore the gray area. And for me, I just wonder, what can we as a board do to facilitate that feedback? It's not like I want to shut down community voices who want to express that they think a different light bulb is better, but also feel confident in setting our parameters so that we can either support the decision or provide feedback that actually maybe the proclamation "Let there be light" wasn't specific enough, because it turns out a segment of the population, it wasn't bright enough light for them to succeed. Forgive me for going full into this.
You're really into
You're gonna down fucking no, sorry. I'm really into this is it. But you see, like, this to me is what we as a board are grappling with. And so as good as it is to set up the ideals, I think the boots on the ground, our experience has been everything in the gray area, and no real clarity as to what we as a board can do to help resolve those tensions, right? What is our role or our responsibility to set up either the initial parameters or our response to prepare for the inevitable backlash on certain choices that are made, which might even be the right choices for the district, but nevertheless engenders that response.
And I think it goes back to the visioning issue and our end statement, and not having established goals that make sense for where we are now and what we have available to us. Because if we all had a collective understanding about what the end vision is, I'm gonna jump out of that. If we all had an understanding about what that end vision is, then when a concern comes, we wouldn't have to feel so backed into a corner. We would say, this decision supports this. And we just don't have that yet. We don't have that sort of backbone structure for ourselves. So I think understanding this as it is, and having that, and then what we do after lunch today will provide a lot of what this gray area we're sitting in right now has been for us for a while.
I wonder, this is jumping back into the analogy.
Wait, which rung of the ladder are you on, Patrick?
I'm not on the ladder, we're focused on the light. The decision to go LED instead of solar, right? So when the community says it should have been solar after a decision was made for LED, to me, a response that the board could offer is, Patrick, we're hearing this from the community, please, so I'm thinking about policy 2.8, communication and support to the board. Patrick, please bring us a report on all the options you explored and the pros and cons of those and why you picked this. Then you have, as a board, the background behind the decision to then say to the community, I hear you want solar people. There are lots of other people out there you're not hearing from. This is information, this is the decision that was made, seems like a reasonable decision, we support it, we're moving on.
I would agree, and I'd almost challenge to hear that on the front end, so we have that support, right? And we've analyzed it or done our data analytics, whatever words you want to use, so that we can feel comfortable that when a community member calls us up, we go, actually, we talked to Patrick about this, and he provided us this data. So right from the get-go.
The challenge is which of the thousands of decisions I make in a week do you want?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's sort of why if we don't have the vision set, right, I'm not even sure which way we're going at the moment, right? Like I'm not sure what we're headed towards or what we're looking at. And as a board chair, when you're all asking me questions about things like, I don't know either. Let's figure it out, right? But that's where we're at. We're at that figuring it out stage, which is really hard to be in because a lot of decisions have to be made really quickly. Because time is never on our side, yeah. So, but I appreciate this because this is going to help us do all that when we get there.
Well, and I mean, understanding the challenge, I think, is half of the battle. And you're understanding you have some challenges, and you're making the right moves to rectify. You're doing portrait or graduate. You're going to modify your vision or your global end statement. But you can't stop there because, as you were saying, Mike, and others were as well, that's such a big statement. And what does it mean? And so then and we struggle with that. We're a policy governance board as well. We have this gut instinct that we're moving towards it. We think, but it's hard to say how. So it does need more clarity and defining than just that one big statement. And that's really up to the superintendent to help interpret what that statement is. And the way you can interpret it is through some of these benchmarks or goals. What goals could you set? And they don't have to be a year of goals. Sometimes goals take 2-3 years to achieve, and that's okay. So by being more clear on what the goals are of the district that are helping you move you towards that end statement, then you have something that you can hold him accountable for implementing goals. And sometimes superintendent's goals are very much the same as the goals of the district. They're tied together. So that's how some districts will do a superintendent. Since he is your one employee, that's a way you can, another lever, if you will. What else was I going to say about that? I heard in this group over here, you all were talking about you feel like you're constantly reacting, right? And there was a lot of stress this past year. And I just heard you say something, Erin, that made me think of that comment when you're saying, I don't know how to respond to community members when I don't know where we're going. I don't know what that vision is. So I think once you have a little bit more vision, like a little more clarity around the vision, that again, your owners are having direct input into, it's their vision, right? then you have some goals that are supporting and helping move the district towards the vision, you'll have a more self-confidence to address members' concerns. You'll be in a more proactive position. That's what we want to be. We want to be in a proactive position as a board. We don't want to constantly react. We have to react sometimes. It's just part of the work. But again, we don't want to be in there the majority of the time. We want to be in a more of a proactive driver's seat kind of role. So let's keep going a little bit more with more information that may help inform our discussion and provide some more clarity. So the role of a district school board. So the school board acts as a trustee on behalf of the community to provide oversight of public education. There's that word, oversight, assuring 3 things happen. First, that a high quality education is provided for every student in the district. Secondly, that the public gets a good return on its investment. And third, that the system operates efficiently, effectively, and ethically. So that word trustee I underlined for a reason, because, and it's worth, I think, briefly talking about it. Board members in Vermont, we serve as trustees on behalf of the community. And let me tell you a little bit more about what this word means, trustee. It's a big word. So trustees have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the organization that they serve. So in our case, it's our districts, right? We have a fiduciary responsibility to our district. That's why we provide fiscal oversight. Trustees are often appointed or elected to oversee the overall direction of the organization. Again, the school district is our organization, so we are often appointed or elected. In our case, we're elected to oversee the overall direction of the district. Trustees are expected to make decisions that align with the mission and the goals of the institution, considering the long-term sustainability and well-being of the organization. And trustees are accountable for the outcomes of their decisions. Now, it's different from being a representative. I hear that word sometimes used, that I'm a representative of the town of Chittenden. That's where I live, okay? Because, well, now both Chittenden and Mendon were unified union school districts, so both towns are electing us, but we're not technically representatives. We're not a voice for a particular group or constituency. So that's different from being an elected representative, right? Elected representatives tend to be accountable to a constituency or a group of people. Representatives often will advocate for the interests of a specific group or the concerns or the perspectives of a population. And representatives don't tend to have fiduciary responsibilities. So our role as school board members is really more similar to that of being a trustee than a representative. We are entrusted by the community, by those who elect us, to serve in the best interests of the district, the school district. So sometimes I've seen this since Act 46 when we all became together, and I see school board members still introducing themselves as, hi, I'm Debbie Singheiser, and I'm on the Barstow Unified School District Board, and I serve Chittenden. But I don't. I serve the whole Unified Union School District. I serve both towns. So it's just a different way to kind of, it's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. School board members are more trustees than representatives. Any questions, concerns? You want to debate that?
I just want to acknowledge the challenge. Because everything about the structure suggests representative. You're elected by the town where you live,
like so many things are organized around you connected to the town where you live, which points in the direction of you sit on this board as a representative of that town. And it's not accurate, which creates a problem.
Yes, and I hear what you're saying. You're also bringing a voice for your town, so that voice can impact the greater district as a trustee. So we just have to remove ourselves from trying to act on behalf of what Bristol wants or what New Haven wants, and say, well, here's what they're thinking, but how does that impact our greater goal? Yes.
And helping educate the communities what your goals too. I think oftentimes it's a problem because they think we're the representative.
I think one of the fundamental rubs here is that for any one of the schools to leave the district or the union, it takes a vote of that town. So again, here's the conflict. I mean, when the consolidation was founded, you didn't take all of this into consideration. You know, there are a lot of subtleties that were missed. And yeah, I do represent the district, I understand that, but I live in New Haven. And I know my neighbors, and people will come to me. Somebody from Robinson isn't going to call me up. They're going to call, their board member. So
We don't speak as an individual. You speak as a board, as a whole. Remember that whole board.
but just remember, you can't speak as a whole. I don't live in every one of these towns. You know, if I split my time between all the towns, that's fine. I think that the word steward is as important as trustee, because with the word steward, not only do you have the same roles and functions as a trustee, but you're intentionally bringing a skill set to a board. So a skill set in this institution could mean the input from the group of people in your community. I know my community just like you know Bristol, or you know Moncton or Starksboro. That's an important skill set as a steward. So it's hard. It's a hard role, and I think it's important, because how would we know? You know, we weren't embedded in each of our own communities. How would we know that?
I think that's where, again, I'm just, the whole visioning piece, right? So if we've had all this information sort of compiled, we've got all the 4 towns in one area saying, you know, this is what's important in each of these towns, and where does it all overlap, and how does that overlap move us all forward? You know, that's where this idea of a trustee, steward, whatever, comes together, instead of just representing one piece, because it isn't just going to be the New Haven interests moving MAUSD forward. It's going to be, right, all 4. So it's getting that data as part being embedded in that community, and then putting it all together in the pot and mixing it up and moving us all together. So, I mean, it's all the same. We're all looking at the same thing. I think we're just like at different points of understanding how that all functions as, you know, what is the function of all that, right? How does it move us all forward?
I think also that the community views us as their representative, and that even though we are functioning as a unit, it's really important that they embrace the idea that we're functioning as a unit and that we're no longer exclusively theirs.
And we may not see that ever change. The reality is we may not ever see that change until we start unifying schools, you know, closing some schools down and bringing more of a collective together. For as long as we still have independent schools in each of the towns, that's not going to change. It really is not. We may see ourselves as a board, and I think we function pretty well as a board together, representing the whole district. That's not how we're viewed, though. You're right.
I sense this group likes analogies. Do you want one more? I know you do, Mike. So sometimes it's helpful to think about the board standing on a balcony, and that's what your view is from a balcony, right? You're looking down at a bigger landscape. You're looking out at the horizon. You're focused more on the big picture than you are on the individual elements in front of you. So this kind of goes to that whole visioning part of your work, the balcony view. So our job as board members is really to focus on that future. So not just what's happening today in 2024, but what we need to also think about is what's coming. What's coming next year, what's coming 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. And so when I say that, it's like thinking about a lot. It's thinking about how education's changing, public education is changing. We know it's changing. Workforce development changes, the changes in our own communities. Like you were saying, you wouldn't know unless you live in the community. Like, what are the demographics looking like in your communities? Like, there's a lot of change. So we have to be in that position to be thinking about those changes and the potential impact they're going to have on our school district. So I think it's sometimes helpful to picture yourself standing on a balcony with a cup of coffee and overlooking the bigger landscape, the bigger picture, and really trying the best we can to see the bigger picture so that we can be better at future planning. Some people will say that boards should operate the 30,000 foot level. That's another analogy, or that you will, if you will, just that's our perspective, is at the 30,000 foot view. Patrick is busy looking below and down here and trying to, navigate everything that's going on here. But we really need to be seeing the bigger picture. And it's not easy. It's almost like we're a little bit of fortune tellers in a way. I'm gonna take a stretch. You feeling okay? We've got about 15 minutes to go. I'd like to do one of two things. One, I have an activity where it's just a basic role and responsibility. We could do it together. It has 15 different rules, and your job is to decide if you think this is the role of the superintendent or the board or both. There's that gray area. We could do that, or depending on how many of you read the article, we could jump into a little discussion about the article, the 8 characteristics of an effective school board. So it's really up to the will of the board what you want to do with 15 minutes.
I just have a quick question. Yeah. We have a really large group of people here, and it feels exclusionary if not everyone is participating in the discussion. So this might be a really good opportunity to join everybody. I feel like it's kind of like
to bring our observers into the discussion. If that's how you'd like to spend the rest of the time, I'm happy to do that. I'd love to do that, but it's your time, so tell me what would be helpful to you all.
In what capacity? What are you thinking?
I guess I'm not clear what everybody's role is here. The board seems to be doing our very function thing, and then we've taken these folks away from whatever their important roles are to join us, but there's no communication. I think they probably have a really good perspective on what a board versus superintendent might do with.
Right, like same question, roles and responsibilities of the board versus the superintendent. Or anything, any thoughts on what you've heard this morning? Right?
And acknowledging that whatever lands in the superintendent's side is a collective.
You're the ones climbing the ladders, putting those ladders.
Other duties as assigned. So I guess it's up to the board if that's what they want.
Yeah.
So the question would be, if I'm hearing it right, what do you think? Well, what do you want to find out? What do they think about this whole discussion, or do you want to see how they feel? Oh, I don't have enough copies, but we could definitely. That's a great idea. I love that. Okay. Well, I have 10 copies because I thought I was only going to be working with the board. But what I will do.
We just got into our groups and did it together.
We could do it in groups. Yep. Why don't we get back into our groups?
So, 5 of you joined one group, 5 joined in?
small groups, and small groups, you guys will fill out the first column, which is mine. This is supposed to be an individual exercise and then a whole group. So just write down what you think would be in your group if you can come to consensus.
So do smaller groups, not 2 groups of 10, so you get that smaller thinking?
So 2 groups of 10.
I'm prepared to do smaller groups. I have that ready for afternoon activities, so I can just.
Yeah, we could do that. You mean that it would be mixed groups?
Yes, it'd be a mix of board members and administrators, but they'd be groups of 5-ish instead of 10.
Let's do that.
All right, first group then that will get together: Ann McKinney, Andy Weiss, Jason Rasco, Melissa Laurie, and Kylie Pelland. The next group: Shannon Warden, Mike Lansing, Aaron Jipner, Barb Crandall. Next group: Katrina, Aaron Tebow, Aaron Boynton, Liz Sarah, Mike Dash. And the last group: Beth McGeorge, Travis Park, Patrick Green, Kathy Apgar, Justin Pearson.
You got one. All right. Yeah. So where did you all? Who had some roles or some roles that were BS? Board superintendent.
Yeah, we had develop a vision for the district with community input and review the audit and use the information to inform policy and internal controls. But policy being possibly board and internal control superintendent. So those were our 2 that were both.
Ours were set goals for the superintendent. We realized we really don't have any process for the board to help set those goals right now. And we only have a different policy to look at. We don't have a skill set for this yet. And determine specific levels of expenditures within the budget. It's the superintendent until we run into a situation like we did this spring where it needs to be adjusted. And audit also is where we did both.
That's 2 groups. Is there a third? I know there's 4 groups, I think. 4. So there's 3 and 4.
Yeah, we had number 1, so developing the vision, also number 14, and then we had some question marks because I think the word determine is interesting, and tripped us up on a couple of them, so like numbers 9 and 13, depending on what level or what you're looking at.
And the last group.
I think we had come up with negotiate teacher contracts. Is that where we were, or is that right? Is that the conversation?
We had a question.
About who negotiates? Or negotiate?
Which,
That's what we said, but you were involved too,
Well, that's what I was struggling with. So, to what extent is this the superintendent and the board are involved in it, and to what extent is it their responsibility? I'm involved in negotiating a contract. It is not my responsibility. It's a contract between the board and the teachers union. Same, and I was thinking the same, like concern developing a vision. So certainly the superintendent's involved in developing the vision. It's the board's job to set the vision. Vision, mission, ends, clearly board work, in my opinion.
So again, we have to think about the difference between a responsibility and a role. Right. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so by statute, boards are required to, is it approve the teacher contracts, right? Yeah, approve the teacher contracts. And they're, or ratify, there's the word, yeah. The negotiation, board members may or may not be there. Likely they are, along with the superintendent. That's often how I see negotiations being done. Some boards don't have board members negotiate, but they ask somebody else in the community to play that role for them on their behalf. So that's another way you can do it.
And I think our board has done it where we do the negotiating and our admin team is support.
Yeah. And you might have your district attorney with you as well.
We use a mediator. Yeah.
Okay.
District, that's the norm in a lot of places, sort of traditional bargaining. Yep.
I'm curious to know about that set goals for the superintendent. Somebody said they had both the superintendent and the board marked there. You know, as a supervisor or as the direct report, I would say, well, yeah, I mean, the board technically should play that role of setting the goals for the superintendent, but what employee wants their supervisor to set goals for them? Like, I would think that would be a very important one where you'd want to work in partnership and have that conversation together. Because, yeah. Any others that review the audit and use the information to inform policy and internal controls? That tripped up a few groups, I think. Sometimes it has to do with the way these are worded. Why did some people think that was a superintendent role?
I was thinking of it from the perspective of there are policy implications depending on what audit findings may be. So we may need to write policy or change policy to address a finding. And there may be some practices that are sort of more procedural that require internal controls that fall under the purview of the superintendent. So you have policy and practice that has a foot in both board and superintendent world.
That was what tripped us up. That tripped us up. The word internal led us to think superintendent, but the policy board. So
yeah,
that's
Does your board review audit reports?
Yeah, every year. Yeah. So like one thing that came up on an audit report, or the only thing, was how we were handling the receipt of cash from fundraisers, and having a system in place for what you do with cash that's received, like 50-50 offers and whatnot.
GASB 84, everybody's favorite.
So like that's definitely not board work. But if we need to look at it and review it to see if there was something bigger or it's the fiduciary responsibility.
Right.
It's fiduciary.
How much of a cut we got, is that?
I know.
One of the ones that maybe we're talking a little bit more about, the specific levels of expenditures within a budget. I know that got tricky this year in light of what you were saying. You sort of set that context after a little bit. In defeated budgets, who then holds that ultimate responsibility for that? That got complicated for us this year, as it probably did in other districts.
And again, I think the word determining, right? So specific levels of expenditures within a budget. That's very broad in terms of, do I need to be able to see every line and know what's in every line? No. But if it doesn't make sense, like to bring up what our group was talking about, like if it doesn't make sense how much we're spending for toilet paper versus for, kids' well-being, well, then we need to talk about that, right? So what does determining mean? And if our role is to be financially responsible and make choices in terms of what's best for the district, it wouldn't make sense for us to spend more on toilet paper than on kids, right? So I think there's some sort of balance there that makes me believe it's both working together to look at that, even though we're setting a target. It just makes me feel like it's sort of a collaborative thing.
Any final ones that you want to talk about, discuss before we close?
I'm thinking more globally than any one of these in particular, but I think part of where, because of some of the gray and the both kind of aspects and the complexities like we just talked about with that example, understanding that wherever sort of the decision-making authority lands, whether it's the superintendent or the board, those who wind up with that responsibility also hold the accountability.
Right.
So in that example, if we choose not to spend on toilet paper in favor of something else, and the board decides that because it gets into this sort of really tricky area, when there's no toilet paper that isn't the responsibility of the superintendent. Because the superintendent didn't hold that decision making for that decision.
It's a two-way street. Accountability and responsibility. Accountability flows down, responsibility flows up. Yep. So I think the key takeaway for me when I do these exercises, because as you can see, that's not easy. It's not as clear as we'd like it to be. Going back to what I said at the beginning, kind of being comfortable with the discomfort is important as boards. I think one of the keys to effective and strong boards is that having that communication and trust between a board and a superintendent is what is important and essential. So that when you do get into these gray areas that are tricky to navigate, that you have those conversations and you trust each other to do what's right for the district and how to resolve the disagreement in terms of whose role it is. I hope this 2.5 hours has been helpful. As I said also at the beginning, it never ends, the learning. I feel like we just scratched the surface and we just saw what's above the water in terms of the iceberg analogy. I love analogies. We looked at what we could see above the water, but there's a lot more beneath the water that we didn't get to. So here's my advice to boards is, I'll go all the way to the end. Whoop. First of all, reach out anytime with any questions, issues that you confront. I'm always happy to answer. If I can't, I will find you somebody who can. We at the Vermont School Boards Association have a really small team of 5. So if it has something to do with, say, superintendent evaluation, that would not be me, that would be my colleague. If it has something to do with policy or advocacy work, that would be somebody else at the office. So use me as your first point of contact if you have a question, and if I'm not the right person, I'll direct you to the right people. We have a ton of resources at the School Boards Association. I hope I put them in. I didn't. And that was an oversight of mine. Yep. Oh no, here it is, sorry. Are you seeing that? Yep. Use our resources. You're members of the Vermont School Boards Association, so everything is free. The website has a ton of resources. It has a toolkit that goes along with this book. If you would like another copy of the book, let me know. I'm happy to give you one. I don't know if you ever tune into our webinars. They usually happen at lunchtime. We call them lunchtime webinars. We have one a month, and they're all recorded. So if you can't tune in live, they're all archived on our website. So if you are coming up to, say, we're going to have one in November on negotiations. So if you're heading into a negotiations year, this could be a good webinar to watch. We've had, if you say you have a student hearing coming up, well, we had one on student hearings last fall. They're all archived there. You can look at the archive and just find the webinar that would be helpful to you. Board chair, Aaron, and vice chairs are welcome to join us once every 6 weeks. We have a forum where chairs and vice chairs come and just talk to each other, bounce ideas off of each other, ask questions of each other. It's a real nice support group. They're not recorded, there's no agenda. It's really a chance to share information and tips with each other. And then our annual conference this year, it's actually going to look very different. I don't know if your board has ever gone to our conference. I can't recall if you all were there last year. But as many of you who wants to go, this is an amazing opportunity for some very intense learning. We're doing a day-long workshop this year. It used to be 2 days, so now it's just on a Friday. The night before is going to be a celebration of public education, where we're going to be inviting students to come present and also perform in the evenings. It's really to highlight to celebrate all the great things that are happening in public education, especially in light of some of the challenges that we're all facing. The focus this year is going to be on community engagement and visioning. That's going to be the focus of the conference. And we have one of our keynote presenters will be coming from Apple Education, who's a phenomenal speaker. He's going to be talking about the importance of vision in our own personal lives, but also in education. I've heard him speak. I have chills right now just thinking about how passionately he speaks. We have another keynote speaker who's coming from an NGO called Disagreeing Better, how to hold difficult conversations. And I think that one is going to be extremely helpful given the budget season that's facing us. I just think that workshop's going to be phenomenal. And for any school board member who can take a day off of work in late October, I'd encourage you to come. So those are ways you can continue your learning. I'm always happy to come back to do more. Oh, I didn't show you. We are running the Policy Governance Maintenance Program again this fall. It was it's coming out in today's weekly update. So I've spoken to Aaron and Patrick and Mike, I think, about the Policy Governance Maintenance Program. It's basically a program that we've designed for policy governance boards that are in that advanced phase of implementation, but who really need a little bit of assistance, some technical help. Maybe there's some kind of thorny issues that are rising. It's a 6-month program. Part of it's in person, most of it's online. We just finished our first cohort from January to June. This one's going to run September to February, and it's put on by me and Jeannie Collins, who's a former superintendent who is very familiar with policy governance, and she's actually being trained right now as a trainer of policy governance. So if you can, it's open to all boards. I mean, it's open to all board members. The best is when the whole board can participate with the superintendent. I know that's not always possible, but we do encourage that, and everything's recorded as well. So even if you can't attend live, you can always watch it, watch the forums later. So I could go on. That's just, again, a few of the resources that we offer, but I want to let you go to lunch and just thank you for your participation. Thank you for your observation and participation at the very end. And I wish you the very best luck this year. Have a great year. Good luck. We're all in this together. Right.